Hey Panda Nation, you are listening to the Inverted Gear podcast with your hosts Nelson and Hillary. Join us every week as we take you behind the scenes into our brand, discuss upcoming projects, and conversate beyond the mat with the interesting people we've met along the way.
Hey Tristan, how are you?
Nelson, Hillary, how you guys doing? I'm well. Thank you guys for including me on this. I'm honored and I feel special and I'm excited just to catch up with you guys.
Well, you are special, so thanks for being here.
Yeah, Tristan, you are one of my good friends. We've known each other for what? How many years now? Over 10 years, right?
Dude, yes. I think it's actually 10 years. This June, July 1st, June 30th, it'll be 10 years.
So you've been doing jiu-jitsu for 10 years, and when you started training, you had this knucklehead purple belt teaching you. His name was Nelson. And somehow you stuck through that.
Yeah, man. So June, so I said June 30th, 10 years ago, I walked into the doors at North Plainfield Fight Club on Somerset Street in North Plainfield, and I met Nelson. And, I'd always, as a kid, I had always wanted to get into like martial arts. I always kind of upset with my parents that they never signed me up for Taekwondo. Because I just wanted to get into martial arts. I just wanted to learn how to fight. And, I came to the gym because someone had asked me to film their son getting his black belt in Taekwondo. So I'm filming, getting some footage, and I look around and I'm like, oh, jiu-jitsu. I feel like I've seen it on YouTube or heard someone talk about jiu-jitsu. I'm like, I think it's wrestling. I know they do chokes, UFC. I really know what it was, but I had heard about it before. And then when I was filming, you guys were having a class in the back room in the old, it was two floors. It was the main floor where the belt ceremony was, and it was the back room. And I'm looking oh man, what are those guys doing back there? See people wrestling around. I'm like, man, I think I want to sign up for this. So yeah, I came back a few days later and signed my contract and started, and it's been, man, it's been amazing. It's been about 10 years. I've had a few different instructors, the same school. Primarily Nelson was primarily, our instructor until you moved to Pennsylvania. And then Dave took over with Kev kind of filling in I would visit his school. But yeah, man, it's been a cool journey. I love it. I pray that I'm able to do it for the rest of my life. I love it. I think for me, it's been a little interesting because, there's a few guys that are maybe 5 or 6 years younger than me and they don't have the same life things going on. They're not married, they don't have kids, and I think those things present challenges, right? Because I have to give my energy to my wife, I have to give my energy to my son, but at the same time, I love jiu-jitsu and I want to continue that. So but I want to ask you, what's that transition like? I mean, you've been through it, you and Hillary. How has it been to have a family and do jiu-jitsu? And I know you guys have a pretty cool story.
Like you said, is you have to realize you're not in the professional athlete track anymore. You're not this young blue belt that is just only thing going on in his life is morning training, night training, maybe work part-time somewhere, a few hours in between. You have a family, you have a career. I mean, you guys, you are a brown belt now, and then during that time, you got married, you had a kid, you became a doctor of education. So, your path's gonna be different. Even when we were training before the pandemic, when Leo was little, we were still it was a far cry from when we were young and had very little responsibilities. I remember a long time I was getting double sessions just about every day of the week. Not only was I training every day, I was training morning and night, 4 or 5 days a week, and then squeezing an extra training session in on Saturday. So the amount of mat time I got the first 7-8 years I did jiu-jitsu was ridiculous. And I would train more in a week back then than I train in a month now. So it it's just the mat time. It's not only, I really feel when it's not a jiu-jitsu learning, there's not a linear curve. I really feel it's exponential. It's sometimes like your learning curve is like very flat, and then you hit that spot where like things just click, and then you shoot way up. And when you put in that many hours in, like you really hit that curve going up. And when you're only training 2 days a week, 3 days a week, it's just different. Would you agree, Hillary?
Yep, I do. Your question though first kind of triggered, it reminded me of something that our dear friend, very wise friend, Emily Kwok, talked to me about. When she has 3 kids now, and so it's been a constant, and she runs a gym, she's a world champion, she's continuing to win championships. But it's just like when you can do all that, but then still keep that sense of self. Like, don't quit jiu-jitsu. You don't have to stop. You just find a new balance, because then your kids will see you still being yourself. It's still accomplishing things for yourself, not just like, not everything, like just keeping that sense of self. Like, you don't have to give up and then blame your kids for giving up on something. If that makes sense. But showing like how you work hard and you have your balance and you can still do all these things together. It just might be different. Like you said, like not doing that everything 100% jiu-jitsu all the time. It's still sharing jiu-jitsu with your family, sharing all your, like, because you do so many things. You're a sportsman with your camping and hunting and fishing. You talked about sharing that with Ben, right?
Yeah, I can't wait.
And just having, keeping that sense of self, like these things that you still want to do, these things that you love, these things that you're still learning, and sharing that along the way with your family is a big part of keeping that sense of self.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys saying that, and it kind of like, Nelson triggered, and Hillary, you kind of triggering thoughts, man. It's something that was like a really special time. Like you said, 7 or 8 years. I think for me, it was like 3 or 4 before I started picking up an extra job and like doing other things. But for probably 3 or 4 years, I was doing, 5-6 days a week. And sometimes in that time, double night sessions. I don't know if Nelson remembers this. I'm sure he does, but I used to get off work on like Mondays and Tuesdays at 3:00, and I would drive to Vauxhall, and we would go to at like 3:30. We would all be there for whatever reason, and we would take a nap. Like, we all would sleep on the mats from like 3 to 5. Like, take a nap. We would wake up. We would train at Vauxhall, and then we would drive to North Plainfield because they had a later class. And then we would train there, and we would have like a double session like that. And I feel like in those 3 or 4 years, I learned so much. And even if I didn't like learn how to do a move, like I learned positions, and things they revealed themselves later. Like, I watch a lot of Leandro Lowe stuff, and I've been using his pant grip, and like, I just didn't see that stuff before, whereas now I'm like, oh, like I just see a space for it, you know what I mean? So I think it's one thing to like just like be in a move, but then to also just see something that, you're familiar with. But yeah, those first 3 or 4 years, I learned a lot of jiu-jitsu, training with Nelson, going to the city to train with Fabio, Babs. And then after that 4-year time period, things started happening. I picked up a job. I started dating Laura, so I had to like kind of like switch things up. And then now, I identify with what you said, Hillary. Like now, my trainings are like Tuesdays and Saturdays. So like, I get to the gym early Tuesday night. I jump on the bike maybe sometimes, or I like stretch a little bit. And then, I train hard Tuesday, like hard. I give everything I have, like go with all the biggest guys, go with the little guy, I go with everyone. And then like, that's my training day. And then Saturdays is like a secondary day. Sometimes I get there, sometimes I don't. This weekend, Ben's daycare has like a family day, so I won't be going to my Saturday training session. But, yeah, I mean, that's just what jiu-jitsu is for me now, and I think I've accepted that. Whereas maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I would get frustrated and compare myself to the younger guys and be like, man, they're getting so good so fast, and I wish I could train 5 or 6 days a week. But I think probably like, during the pandemic / this year, I've just accepted that this is what jiu-jitsu looks like for me now, like it's okay,
Yeah. Also, I think as a parent, there's value on not only like the fitness aspect of jiu-jitsu and showing your kids that, hey, like, that like we value fitness in our family. We value exercise and being healthy and eating healthy so we can perform when we do jiu-jitsu or grappling or whatever activity we're into. But I also, the pursuit of something that's hard is important, and seeing your kids pursuing something that it is so hard to get good at, and the value on working on something for years. You know, like you've been training jiu-jitsu how many years now? You still haven't reached your black belt, and then like you meet and the funniest thing about like a jiu-jitsu black belt is like no one gets it that's outside of jiu-jitsu. You meet a normal person, they're like, oh yeah, I've been training 10 years at jiu-jitsu. It's like, oh, you're a black belt. It's like, oh no, not yet. I was like, oh, my kid is a black belt and
yeah,
take one
so
though.
it's like their kid got it. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, same thing, buddy. Same thing.
They're a phenom.
Yeah, dude, I hear that, and I'm getting chills thinking about it, because like, just to think about black belt is like another thing. But like, you know, when people say that about their kids, taekwondo, it's like, oh, my 9-year-old is a black belt, and you're like, jiu-jitsu doesn't work like that, man.
No, yeah, not to take away,
yeah.
but it's just different.
It's
especially
so
as an
different.
adult who picks it up, yeah, like a little later
And
in life too.
One thing that we listen to podcasts, Instagram, all that stuff. One thing that I love, I think Babs said it a few years ago. I could be wrong, but he was like, as like, we think jiu-jitsu is popular, and it really is becoming like really, really, really popular, but it's still really small. Like, our world has grown, like the jiu-jitsu world has grown. It just in the 10 years that I've been training, like when I started, I remember, Nelson was a purple belt. Like, I didn't see brown and black belts until I went with you to Abu Dhabi trials in New York, I think. Like, and then I was like, oh my God, there's brown belts and black belts that exist that are not like the top guys, like on, at the world championships. Because in New Jersey, there weren't a lot. I mean, there was like a handful here and there, but there weren't a lot of like high level guys. Now, forget about it. I mean, I'm a brown belt, black belts, everywhere. But, like I said, it's getting popular. But to the outside world, people who don't train jiu-jitsu is still, I feel like, kind of like fairly new, or not that popular.
Yeah, it's funny how like there's more and more mentions on use like mainstream media, like like there'd be like a jiu-jitsu class or something. It's like, oh, this guy does jiu-jitsu, or like even like jiu-jitsu moves like being thrown more and more into movies, and like the awareness of jiu-jitsu has really changed. Like even like action sequences of movies. Like if you watch like 80s movies, there was like sleeper holds, and you're like, that doesn't work. That's not a real choke. Like like their shoulder is in and they're holding it like this. We're like, yeah, that's not real. Right. And now like the amount of detail that goes into action sequences, like, oh, it's like that triangle choke is legit. Like this is legit. Stuff like that is awesome to see. And then he just gets name dropped in podcasts all the time. And you have like all these celebrities now that are like super into it.
Yeah. Like Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. Like Keanu Reeves, Henry Cavill, where's the British guy? That'll come to me. But yeah, it's just a bunch of people. Like Demi Lovato, like, stuff like that. It's like, oh, like, that's so cool.
11.
Yeah. And I think what's the name? Joe Rogan does a great job, promote. I mean, even though he's promoting the UFC, but a large part of the UFC is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that gives the mainstream world, like people will say to me, "Oh, do you know how to do a rear naked choke?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like,
you learned that the first day.
I remember that'd be like a party trick when I just started. Like everyone, like in my family, were like, "Wait, what? What's this joke?"
Yeah. It's hilarious.
Yeah, so in my fraternity, like we always like to wrestle. It's like machismo was like a thing. So like everybody likes to wrestle. So when I first started training, they were like, show me something. And I was like, most fights at some point, one guy is going to rush the other guy, or, females, and they're going to try to like tackle them to the ground. And I just did a guillotine. I'm like, all right, rush me. I didn't tell them what it was. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, rush me. And they like rush me head down, typical like head down bull thing. And I'm like, and they're like,
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right, so you started jiu-jitsu in, what year was that? Like 2012? No, 2011?
Yeah, 2011. Yep.
So in 2011, since then you went deep down this path in higher education. So talk to us about your career real quick.
So I'm a teacher. I started teaching right out of college, and went into the same high school where I graduated from and grew up. And while I was teaching, I got a second master's degree. I had a first master's degree, and a second one in educational leadership. And my goal was to become an administrator, to help my family financially, and just because I kind of looked at it like, when you're a teacher, you're helping and you're improving the lives of those kids in front of you, which may be 100 kids. But when you're an administrator, you have the opportunity to, impact change on, hundreds of kids, thousands of kids. Like my position now, I'm the district supervisor of socialized education. So I work with the history teachers in Plainfield, and the things that I implement essentially touch all of the kids in the district, which is upwards of around 10,000 kids. So some of the decisions that I make, really can help these kids, and the programs that I implement and things like that. But also with getting my second master's, like everything in my life, it's usually like somebody's like, oh, you want to do this? Are you interested? And I'm like, yeah, why not? Let me try. So someone came into a graduate course, and they were like, hey, if you take a few more classes and write this thing called a dissertation, you can get your doctorate. I'm like, man, Dr. Cox, that sounds great. I was like, man, I probably could make good money, and like, it sounds great. And like, in all seriousness, I have a passion about redefining what it is to be an African American male. And sometimes, people like have negative stereotypes and things like that. So like, for me, like, I love it when people are like, you ride horses and you like bears and camping. I'm like, yeah, black people do that stuff too. So I just thought that it would just be a good thing to add to the resume, to get the doctorate, to make me more marketable, to help me in my profession. But I want to stop and talk about like the connection between jiu-jitsu and advancing in life and through my professional career. And one of the things that I want to say is, like, in jiu-jitsu, things don't work out right away. Like, you have a problem and you're trying to solve it. You're not going to solve it overnight. Like, I'm trying to pass Evan's guard. Everyone knows that Evan has an awesome spider guard. It's going to take time to get better to be able to pass Evan's guard. And I think I've tried to apply that principle of like working hard over a long period of time to my life. So like, yeah, if someone may look at me now and say, oh, you have your doctorate, but they don't know that it took me 4 years to get my doctorate. You know what I mean? 2 years of classes, and then 2 years of writing a dissertation, which was really, really, really difficult. And the thing I love about jiu-jitsu is, like, when you show up over a long period of time, you do well. When you don't show up, you get your butt kicked. Like, how many times, I'm going to ask you guys, like, how many times do you like stop training and then you go back and like, what happens?
It's funny now. We haven't trained since the pandemic started. So it's been over a year now. And one of like the local, like, super competitor brown belts swung by the warehouse the other day to pick some kettlebells up. And then he's like, man, you need to come back to train. I would love to come train with you. It's been such a long time. And I was like, in the back of my head, I'm like, this kid just wants to see if he can kick my ass now, because I used to get the better of him every time we roll. And I told him, I was like, hey, like, it's like, I would love to train with you too, but I know this conversation. You just want to see if this old black belt is slipping or not. You started cracking up.
I feel the same way about my brown belt girl. Like, she told me that, like, we were staying in touch, and she sent me a message. She's like, yeah, I had a nap and I had a dream that we were rolling again, and it was so much fun. I miss you. Please come. I'm like, yeah, you want to heel hook me, don't you?
You want to see?
I know it.
Yeah.
And as much as I miss her too, it's like, yeah, I know, it's okay. And it probably will happen because this is probably the longest. This is the longest layoff ever. Wow. But.
Okay.
More goals. Yeah. More goals to reach towards. I mean,
it's like riding a bike. It'll come back eventually.
Yeah.
It'll come back, man. And life is about diversity. You know, you just have different things going on. I mean, you guys are about to have 2 children. Like, that's a huge responsibility. You know, some things fall at the wayside. You know, like you said, like riding a bike. Like, dude, you just get back on and it happens. I just think it's so funny. And I really, like, I try to apply that principle to my life, that you may not, like, I want to get a doctorate. That's a grand task, but like, it may not happen overnight. If you just show up continually over a long period of time, it'll happen. You know, I mean, you guys follow me on Instagram. Like, I spent 2 years, like, complaining how bad life sucked writing this dissertation. But eventually, it happened, man. Like, and it's literally the same thing with jiu-jitsu. Just show up, and you will get better. So, yeah, I just love that. And I really just try to apply, you know, jiu-jitsu principles to my life in terms of accomplishing things professionally and with my family, too. I think about how, you know, tying back to how important Laura is to Ben. And, you know, but just thinking, like, my job is just to be a support system, show up, you know, if it's holding a towel while he cries or holding a bottle, you know what I mean? You just have to show up and be there, you know?
Yeah.
It goes a long way.
It goes a long
really
way.
Does.
And like you said, is I think one of the things Jiu-Jitsu teaches is just like that continuous progress forward, but is being at peace with your goal might take 10 years. But you might not. And the other thing that is frustrating too is like about a lot of these like long-term goals is there's not that instantaneous gratification, because there's like so many times like you might be getting better, but you're still getting your ass kicked every day. And you're like, what am I doing with my life? You know, or like, you know, when you're working your dissertation, I remember those posts from your Panera Bread office, and like you would submit a draft, and your supervisor, your advisor, would just like this red pen all over it, and you just crush your soul. But you know, you got another round of coffee at the Panera Bread, and like went through your draft again.
Yeah. I wanna segue real quick to talk. Like, I'm so thankful for Nelson and Hillary, but probably 8 years ago, I don't know if I was a blue belt yet, but Nelson gave me this book. It's called The Art of Learning, and that book is literally, it's tremendous, and it has these principles in it. And again, you know, tying it to jiu-jitsu, tying it to life, like I've always used these principles to, you know, to be successful or to continue to keep my head straight while I'm forging along. And one of the principles is in investing in loss, right? So like Josh Watkins, Marcelo Garcia's black belt, New York City, wrote this book that's amazing. Everyone should read it. And he talks about, you know, investing in loss. And like with the drafts, like it took me a while, but I had to get to the point where I had to accept emotionally that my advisor was going to rip it apart, right? Submit it. She's going to rip it apart, but ultimately it's just going to help me get better and better and better. And it's the same principle with jiu-jitsu. Like I may come in and I may be getting better, like you said, but Evan's getting better at the same time. So I'm still going to have those challenges. And it's not till, you know, a year or two goes by and then I roll with someone that has only been around for 2 or 3 years and then I kick their butt and then I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting better at jiu-jitsu. So, but yeah, I just wanted to talk about that principle, the book, The Art of Learning. I think everyone should read it. And that principle, investing in losing or investing in loss. So thank you, Nelson, for, you know, giving me that book. I still have the copy of it too. I don't know if you ever looked for it and like, you know, needed to give it to someone else, but yeah, I held on to it.
That's where my original copy is. No, yeah, that's a great book. And like you said, it's just, investing in loss is huge. But one of the aspects of the book that really drew me in is just like figuring out how you learn and like the principles behind like investing in loss. And then I will like look at it, and I have been doing that my whole life without like, you know, putting it into those terms. English is my second language. When I moved to the US, there's this class called English as Second Language. And I remember North Plainfield High School was going through renovation at the time, so it was like a shortened schedule. But if you had English as second language, you had to stay an extra period to go to the ESL class, and that would kill me. That I had to go like an extra hour. Everybody would go home, and then all the immigrant kids had to go like this extra period to sit there. Like, you know, there'd be like all the Ecuadorian kids, all the Chinese kids, like everybody, all the Pakistani kids in North Plainfield had to like sit there and like, I am, you are, he is, she is, and like, you know, go over or English basics. And I was like, for like, you know, I remember I did it for when I moved here, it was like February, and the Chilean school year had ended already because like the seasons are different. So, or summer breaks like December. So the school year had ended already. So I had graduated 8th grade. I moved to the U.S. I had to go back to eighth grade for the remainder of the semester, and I had to take this class, and it was just killing me. So like I said, like freshman year's coming up, I'm gonna force myself to speak English, and I remember it was the end of eighth grade, so they had like the sign-ups for freshman football, and I said no one in the football team speaks Spanish, so I signed up for the football team. I didn't know what a first down was until like halfway through the season. I would just look at the sticks. It's like, all right, it's a 2 now. It's a 3. Wait, why did it go back to 1? Or like, we'll get to the 4. It's like, why are we kicking the ball again? No one bothered. Like, everybody just assumed I knew how the game was played. I had no idea what the rules were. And I would show up. Like, I learned my plays. They would like tell me what to run. I would run with the ball. I'll never forget the coach who was very patient. Like the first day of practice, he asked me, he's like, "Hey, what position you want to play?" I didn't know what a position was. So I just look at him in my broken English. I'm like, "I run very fast." And the coach is like, "Okay, kid, just go with the running backs." And I was, that was like my freshman football experience. And I had like, summer practices. So by the time just forcing myself to speak English, stopped watching TV in Spanish completely. I would force myself to watch TV in English, like, total immersion. The only people I spoke Spanish to were my parents. So like some of the Spanish kids in high school, like thought I was like stuck up because I would not hang out with them. I would not talk to the Spanish kids because I only spoke English. And like, even if they spoke Spanish to me, I'd be like, hey, like I would tell them in Spanish, hey, I'm trying to practice, and then respond in English, like super broken. Yeah. And I tested out, like, I was back in school. I was supposed to take this ESL class, and I was able to like test out by the end of the first quarter or whatever. And it is something that stuck with me. And through like my martial arts, I remember going to judo class, and me and they walking into Cranford Judo, and there's nothing but black belts on the mat, and me and they were like fresh white belts on. And like, these old timers that were in the Olympic team in the 80s, just throwing us all over the place. And we're like these athletic 18-year-olds, like wrestled for years in high school. Didn't matter, like, And like, I just went through it, and there's a point where I fell off judo and started doing jiu-jitsu, but those years are just getting ragdolled by old timers. Every time I do stand up with like 90% of jiu-jitsu people, I can foot sweep them. I can hip throw them. And like my understanding of stand up and grip fighting is so much better than your average jiu-jitsu guy, because I was willing to get just ragdoll and thrown and foot sweat and makikomi by these giant Eastern Europeans.
Oh and, my gosh!
Like anything, just that invested in laws is something that has stuck with me over the years.
Yeah. Hillary, in your career, did you ever like kind of use that principle in life or in jiu-jitsu?
All the time. I mean, I don't know if it was by comparison, like that's a serious story when you come here and you just immerse yourself, like you force yourself like to immerse in a new language. Like that actually, just thinking about having to do that for myself would be terrifying. But I mean, yes, like I didn't get my black belt by quitting, right? There were so many times I wanted to, so many times I got the crap beat out of me, and I'm like, why am I doing this to my body? Why am I doing this to my mind? And I wanted to overcome a lot of things inside of me that I think needed to happen and grow. And I mean, yeah.
I mean, also,
I really appreciate a lot of like what you guys have to say too, just what people go through to get to where they are. Like, you don't always think about it, but like your dissertation, like I can't imagine having to write a paper for 2 years and like have to keep getting that red pen come back to you and not wanting to just quit. Like, fine, I'm never going to please this person.
Yeah.
And I'm always like trying to please people, like no matter how hard I try.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
You just can't. You just can't always, but you need to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
To reach your goal, and then that gratification is that long term that you'll get there.
Real quick, I wanted to ask you, what was it like? I mean, I know the answer, but like, what was it like when you started jiu-jitsu as a female to like now? You know what I mean? Like what the availability of training partners, like, you know, I mean, how long have you been doing the jiu-jitsu? 15 years at least?
Yeah, forever. No, and yeah, it's like I did. You know, what inspired me in the beginning, where there's what were they? The old I can't even remember the name of them, but the old videos like where they followed a lot of like the champions in Brazil, and I remember seeing Leticia Ribeiro, like tiny ass woman.
Was it BJ Spirits? Is something like that?
It's Arte Suave.
Arte Suave, yeah.
Arte Suave, yes.
That, I don't know how, it was a friend who was doing jiu-jitsu had the tape, and seeing the girls, like, and there was a reel of girls competing at the end. I think actually when I met Angelica Gavao, that she said that's the tournament where I met Andre. She was a blue belt competing at the Worlds, and but just seeing that other women could do it, and then knowing all these guys that did it, and then seeing a competition, like I would go to competitions and watch, and seeing some of these younger girls being able to do it, like girls smaller than me, like taking out people they're like huger than them just so they could have a match, and like I could do this too, and then trying to earn the respect to be on those wrestling mats with like the rest of the guys. Like I can take it to, like, you don't have to treat me any different. I'm trying to like just prove a point that it is for everybody, like and then learning about Alio Gracie and the Gracies, just like it really is for everybody, no matter what your age, gender, if you have a disability. And so just making it more about me, and I could do this, I can have this knowledge, I can have this skill, and it's for me, and no one can take it away from me. I'm going to keep learning it, even if maybe some people made me feel like I shouldn't be there. I am here. I deserve to be here. It really is something for everybody. And then when as I kept coming back and seeing like the new girls coming, or the kids, or maybe somebody who had like MS and they couldn't move so well, it's like, it's for you too. Keep coming.
Yeah. That's powerful, because I mean, I remember when I first started, you know, I met you, I guess maybe about halfway through Nelson, you guys, you know, started dating. And like, but I remember like seeing like maybe one female in the jiu-jitsu class. And like now, like I look at Instagram and you'll see like classes of like 8 and 10 females, 15 females on a mat. And I'm like, wow, that's just so powerful for women, because, you know, 10 years ago, maybe one. I mean, I don't even think 10 years ago, like I probably didn't see my first female in class, you know, probably till 2 or 3 years in. And then you feel bad because you're like, oh, you know, I'm 200 pounds going with someone who's like 120 pounds. But then like I think about someone right now, like Lisa Smith. Like, she just got a purple belt maybe a year or two ago. And, yeah, she's kicking butt, man. She's hanging in with the guys, and she's, like, holding her own weight. She beats the crap out of the kids. And it's just cool to see, you know. It's cool to see for women. So thank you for sharing that.
I think the other thing, too, is amazing that if you're a female training, 90% of the time, you are the smallest person in the room. So if you think all our struggles, I think back, like, my struggles starting to train, I was like one of the biggest guys in the room. Like, you're 200 pounds, 190 pounds. Like yeah, there's gonna be some heavyweight that's bigger than you, but 80% of my training partners were smaller than me.
Yep.
So I could get away with nonsense when I was a white belt and blue belt, especially like, you know, the less skilled guys. But if you're 110, 120 pound female, it's like your guard better be on point. Like, you know, your weight distribution on top better be on point, or you're gonna roll over, or you're gonna squash. You know, the guard's gonna get squashed. So I have so much respect for the women that come into the sport and stick with it, especially the ones that, like, you know, the trailblazers that did it before there was a bunch of like female training partners that could go with, you know. And it's just an amazing thing, and I'm proud of this one. She's cool. She's awesome, and it is one of the aspects we talk about too all the time. Is like, hey, like, you know, it's gonna be mom's gonna beat up the kids when, like, you know, they start training, and they're like, before, like, you know, as they're teenagers and they're gonna be pretty close to her size. Mom's like, yeah, I'm gonna put the fear of God in them.
No, I don't know about that, but
No, and for the people who listen to this episode, this isn't just like female participation, like trophy part, like you get a trophy for participation. Like Hillary, like her knee cut, everyone knows Hillary's knee cut is legit. And I remember plenty of times rolling with Hillary and her knee cut slicing through my guard like a hot knife through butter. So this isn't like, oh, women are participating and it's like, oh, they're cute and they're here. Oh, let's like play nice. No, Hillary is coming for your neck.
Yeah, I remember when Hillary started training with us, but there was like a bunch of featherweights at the gym.
Yes.
And like Evan, you mentioned, and there's like 3 other guys that were like, everybody was like a blue belt around 130, 140. So Hillary would just come in and like, she would like rotate training with those guys. And like, I remember like early on, they're like, what is happening to me? Like, she's break grips, knee cut, north-south chuck. Break grips, knee cut, north-south chuck. Everybody. And like the guys were like asking me, like whenever Hillary wasn't around, because she was coming from Pennsylvania, they're like, can we go over stopping the knee cut today? I'm like, why are you asking? Is there something happening to you?
Yeah, man. That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's one of those things too that goes back to I was able to put the time in when I had the time. It was doing the 2-a-days. Like I had a full-time job when I started training and was going to school, but I didn't have anyone else to worry about except for me. So I had the bug. I had the jiu-jitsu bug. I'm like eating, running, lifting, and training whenever I could. And then it was like as I still went through life, it's like I'm still going to get my degree. I'm still going to find a real job, but making it work. Always just finding time and making it work because was my goal. I wanted to get better. Like I said, I was earning that respect. I wanted that confidence. I wanted to get over whatever fears I had, like for real life. Like if I ever was attacked, I had claustrophobia. Like I just couldn't have people holding me. It was like getting over those things. Not easy, but much better for it. And thank you, Jiu-Jitsu, and the people that did support me and the people who didn't, who kept me hungry for it,
Yeah.
So now it's all fun.
Yeah.
Even if I lose,
Yeah.
it's still fun.
Yeah, I think that's a big aspect of jiu-jitsu where you can always, a lot of people I meet, you can see them that they have this hunger and they're on the path and they're learning jiu-jitsu and they're like all about it and they're learning better and they're taking their losses and they've put all this energy into getting better at jiu-jitsu and like winning tournaments and like doing the thing on the mat. But there's a lot, like there's some people like sometimes like the rest of their life is like falling apart and like will not take this part, like that muscle that they generated, like that callus of being able to do the hard things and like put in other aspects of their life. And that is one of the aspects of jiu-jitsu. Like sometimes I'm like I know I had it when I was like a purple belt and like that's all I care about. But as a brown belt and I met Hillary and I was like, hey, I started a company. I was like, okay, I developed this skill set. Is really time I put it into other aspects of my life. And I remember you were part of it. Like our instructor Kevin used to make like a goal meeting in January, and we would talk about our goals. And then one of the exercises have us do is like explain what SMART goals were and like how specific, measurable, all that good stuff. But also had this thing was like the wheel of life and like all different aspects, like your health, your relationships, your education, your business, whatever. And I remember my wheel was like all kinds of lopsided. And like because you made me. I had to like sit back. It's like wow, like I'm putting everything into this, but is my career what I want it to be? I'm teaching jiu-jitsu classes for $50 a week, but can I do this the rest of my life? I mean, $50 a class. Can I do this the rest of my life? I haven't had a relationship that lasted longer than 2 weeks. It's like maybe I need to work on my relationships a little bit. It's like, oh, you want to go out? It's like, oh, no, I gotta go train. I gotta teach 2 classes tonight.
Yeah.
And you made me realize it's like, hey, I can't just live off the BJJF schedule.
Yeah.
And then you see, and then I had it's funny, something now I'm older, and I see coming like jiu-jitsu guys like because I taught for a long time, so like I still have this strong relationship with a lot of you guys, and I see some of you like you are like just killing it in all these aspects of life, and it's awesome to see. But I see like a lot of the guys we came up with are sometimes stuck, and I just want to be like, hey, like your jiu-jitsu is great, but we need to look around, buddy.
How does your wheel look?
Yeah, how's your wheel look?
I remember you guys sharing that with me. Like you would still meet. What was it, like every other week? Or
yeah, we had like
we met once a week. We would have
every week. I remember thinking like this is the Sheridan. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
It was an in-person once a month and a weekly call, I believe.
Okay.
A weekly call on Sundays.
You had to jump on your call. I'm like, yeah, this is a Sheridan mindfuck. I don't know if I can.
Hillary's like,
I can handle this. I'm like,
are these guys in a cult?
Dude, we were in a cult.
But it
a good cult.
For what
I don't know if that's a good.
It seemed very helpful though, like with finding that balance that we've been talking about and reaching your other goals outside of jiu-jitsu. So you can
I'm glad you brought
life,
that up. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Nelson and Hillary, because that was something that was really impactful on my life. And I think Kevin just turned 50. I sent him a video, and I was like, you should be proud of yourself, Kevin, because it's one thing to achieve great things in life, but it's another thing to help other people achieve great things. And Nelson and I are the same age. We were trying to figure out life, and Kevin sat us down. He showed us SMART goals, the wheel of life. And, for me, it was like my finances, and it was getting myself set up. And Kevin told me, he said, for every kid that you have, you want to buy a two-family or multi-family house. So I only have one now. I don't have any other houses. But, so I have one for my son. But, like, it was just like, man, for him to take his time and do that with us, he really set us up. Like, he forced us to think about life outside of jiu-jitsu. And for me, like, my jiu-jitsu focus time was short-lived. It wasn't, like, as long as you. Like, I probably was, like, really focused on jiu-jitsu from, like, white to blue belt. And for most of, like, my blue belt, where I was, like, winning local tournaments, got a couple first places. But then I realized, I'm like, man, the rest of my life is kind of like, so I got to put some energy into other places. But man, what such a like really important part or piece of life was developed with Kay Sheridan and, those SMART goals and the weekly phone calls and the monthly in-person meetings. Man, thank you for bringing it up. I completely forgot about that,
So as we move on from reminiscing about the good old times,
you
have become like this outdoorsman, travel machine, bird photographing, fisherman, and like your social media feed in the summer, I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. And I just want to say a few things. So the first thing I want to say is like, where I grew up in Plainfield, right next door to North Plainfield, where you grew up. I kind of saw this thing where like some of my friends, and maybe not my core group of friends, but like other people I went to school with, they would get stuck and they would think that Plainfield was the world. Like it would be like you'd see like 50, 60-year-old guys like telling stories about back in the day on the block and the street. And then I was like, man, the world is so much bigger than these 6 square miles. So that was like the first thing that kind of like sparked my interest to travel, was like there's a world outside of Plainfield. And then I have my best friend Kaz Beverly. The next thing I want to say is like the people who you surround yourself with are so important. I mean, seeing you guys travel the world has really been cool, and it's impacted my desire to travel. But I want to speak specifically about my best friend Kaz Beverly, and he kind of had this phrase, life is now, and like, let's do things now, because who knows, when we have a kid or we get married, like, are we going to be able to like burn our passports like that and get stamps and travel the world? So we just started traveling, man. We just went to a bunch of different places. I think in my younger years, one of the coolest places I've been was Thailand. I went there specifically to pet tigers at the Tiger Temple. Like that was like my sole reason for going there, because I thought it looked cool. I posted a picture or video of me feeding a tiger and petting baby tigers. To kind of fast forward now, the coolest thing I've done is like my infatuation with bears, and they have this place in Alaska called the McNeil State Sanctuary, where brown bears, not to be confused with grizzlies, they are very similar, but brown bears, they're called coastal brown bears because they live near the water. They eat a bunch of salmon, and in this specific place, there's just so much food that they don't really like think about bothering people. Like they just like, it's like being at a buffet and like you like look at McDonald's. It's like, I'm eating at the buffet. Why do I need to go out and get McDonald's? So you have to get a permit. Only 200 people per season. They have 200 available permits. So when you apply, and like sometimes up to like 10,000 people apply, and the permit's cheap. The permit's like $100. It costs more money to get there than it actually does to like go on the excursion. But the permit's $100. You go there and you camp for 4 days, and you hike out 2 miles every day. You just sit by this kind of like this waterfall where they fish for salmon, and the bears are like all around you. I mean, at the closest point, one bear, we were like walking, hiking, and we saw a bear in the distance. We're like, all right, we sat down. We're like, all right, we're snapping some photos, and the bear got up and he like walked off. And I was like, man, I was getting some cool photos. I'm like mad he walked away. So I started putting my camera stuff away. And they're like, everybody look. So I looked up, and he like came around the side of where we were like hiking. And he literally walked like 2 feet in front of me. And I was like, oh my God. I actually handed one of the guys on the trip, I handed him my cell phone. I was like, I'm going to be a YouTube celebrity. Like a bear walks by me at 2 feet. I don't have to work anymore. Like I just knew like this video was going to go viral, and, but neither here nor there. That's probably one of the coolest stories that I would tell, over drinks, traveling experiences. And I just feel like, money, cars, never really my thing. I mean, I lease a Nissan Pathfinder. I have the baby seat in my car. Is the family car. It's like food in it sometimes. But like fancy cars and stuff, that's never really been my thing. I've always been one to just love experiences, whether it be jiu-jitsu or traveling or life. I just love experiences. So yeah, thanks for asking me about that. I want to ask you guys a question. What has been your favorite place that you guys have traveled? Because you guys have been everywhere. Like literally, I look at you guys and I'm like, I've done nothing. So what? Well, I don't know, Hillary, Nelly, what has been like you guys' favorite place that you've been?
Yeah, I still like Costa Rica. Costa Rica, the beaches and the food and the people, but I don't know. We talk about this all the time too. The places that we've been. There's still so many places we want to go. Like. We were just talking to Jay Pages about Greece. I want to see that blue water. So yeah, places with water for sure.
I love Japan, and I know it's a popular answer. A lot of people are like, oh, Japan. It's just for me. I grew up in Chile. Not a lot of people in my family really like travel, even like outside the country. But when I was little, So I remember have these memories of watching one of Chilean television channels had like a dubbed anime in Spanish, and all this stuff took place in Japan, and I was just watching this anime. I was like, oh man, this is so cool, and I had like a glove, and I would like make a paper airplane and fly from Chile to Japan and tell my mom, it's like, oh, when I grow up, I'm gonna go to Japan, I'm gonna go to Greece, I'm gonna go to Egypt, and then like my mom, and I would do that all the time and use. We had back in the day, because I'm an old man, we had encyclopedias. So like we had like the shelf with encyclopedias, and I would like pull the encyclopedia out and read about the countries I wanted to visit, and then like tell my mom like facts about them. And like my mom never told me, it's like, hey, like never told me no. She just encouraged it. Like it wasn't like, hey, like like we're struggling to buy groceries this week. Yeah, it's not gonna happen. It was just always like, oh, like what else are you gonna go when you grow up?
Yeah.
So I remember like when swinging by my parents, we had dinner. Like we usually we're living in, when the first time we went to Japan, we're like living in Pennsylvania already. So I believe we were like flying out of JFK. So the night before, we spent the night at my parents, had dinner with them, and then like went to the airport the next day. And when I say bye to my mom, like she gave me this like big hug, and like she remembered 6-year-old version of me. Like, hey, when I grow up, I'm gonna go to Japan. I'm gonna do all these things. So like just for that, like that has a lot of value for me. But just I really enjoy Japanese culture. I enjoy Japanese cuisine. Man, like katsu curries, like even like street food in Japan. Like I just enjoy being there so much. It's such a safe country. You can walk everywhere. I would like nerd out and spend like 3 months studying Japanese before each trip, so I could like order
Wow.
food, ask for directions, like just be human, like good morning, Ohayo gozaimasu, just stuff like that. Just like super simple stuff. I like to embarrass Hillary with like my terrible accent, and it's just been a blast. We've been to Japan 3 times. We even took Leo one time, and I love spending time in Japan. And I would like to see more Southeastern Asia. But that for me, like those memories, like the trips we've taken to Japan, are the best. There's still one spot we haven't been to Japan yet. Is Hokkaido. That's like the island all the way north. That's where the Niseko Mountain is. It's like this famous
Oh
like ski
wow.
resort.
Yeah.
Like the snow there is like world famous. Like is like powder. It's just so nice for skiing, snowboarding. So that is like bucket trip is go there, and then also like in Japan there's like these monkeys they're called makakes, and in Hokkaido there's like there's hot springs. There's like natural hot springs, and the monkeys bathe in the hot springs. So I just want to hang out with like, and I like my mom finds it ridiculous. I was like that is my goal is to go and get it like in a hot spring that we're all like share a hot spring with a monkey. That is top of my bucket list.
Wow. Dude, so when you share that story, something, just a thought came. I know we're getting to the towards the end, but something came in when you talked about your mom, and you get like you're like speaking, like feelings come out, and you talk about your mom, and so for me, I thought about like what my inspiration is, not for traveling, but also for accomplishing things, and it goes back to that point about like people from Plainfield kind of being like stuck, but like me having this weird obsession where like if I see something that I like or connect with, I'm like I can accomplish that, and there's literally nothing or no one that can tell me otherwise. Like I remember with the bears in Alaska, I saw a video of a guy who I met virtually. I have all these like Instagram friends, people I've never met in life, where he was sitting at the same cliff in Alaska, and a bear like walks up on his left shoulder and sits like a dog next to him, like yawns, looks left, looks right, hangs out for a bit, and then like he kind of was about to like cross his path, and he says, "Hey," and the bear like shifts his direction. I saw that video and I was like, I'm going there. I'm going to find out who that is, where that place is, because it looks super cool, and I'm going to go there. And like that's kind of how a lot of things have manifested in my life. Like I've seen it one time and I'm like, man, that looks like so much fun. Like, and then I just started doing it, like with jiu-jitsu. Like I saw the sign that was like jiu-jitsu, and I was like, I'm going to do jiu-jitsu. And I just signed up, and then 10 years later, like, you know what I mean? I'm still here. So like, it's just a cool premise of like thinking about like, what is your inspiration, or who is your inspiration? So I'm gonna put the question back to you one more time. You guys both. So Hillary, what or who is your inspiration? If you have one, I don't know. And it doesn't have to be for what I said, but like just in life, like what inspires you or who inspires you?
Oh, so many people. But it's funny, some small story comes to mind is being an only child, watched a lot of TV to pass the time after school. And I remember watching 90210 and wanting to go to California. I need to see what's on the other side of this country because small town girl, never really went anywhere. I barely took any vacations that weren't like a short road trip to see a family member with my parents. So I remember telling my parents, I want to go to California. I want to go to University of California. That's where I want to go to school. And my parents were like, hell no, we're not sending you there. Like, can you afford that? Can you afford to be away that far? And but so they were like, my dad said baby step it, and maybe find a school that at least you can drive to and drive home. So I did. I went to school. I went to college in York. It was about 2 hours away from where I grew up here in Pennsylvania. But as soon as I graduated, I was looking for jobs out in California. I was like, I need to experience something besides this northeastern coast.
Yeah.
So I did. I did. I drove to California, and you know what? My dad was always supportive. They never really tried to tell me what I could or couldn't do. They were just like, you should try, and we're always here if it doesn't work out. And thankfully they were 7 years later when things just didn't work out. And but I was glad to have that experience, you know, and still have that support, even though I was on the other side of the world, it felt like, even though it was only the other side of the country. But I did the trip, and I'm really glad I did. I'm glad I did the trip back too, all by myself. It's just one of those things to at least always know that my dad is there to talk to. He's always very reasonable. He always says, stay flexible. Stay flexible. I even put that on a watch for him for a gift one year, but it's something I always keep in the back of my mind, you know, like things don't always go your way, but maybe your way isn't always the right way, and you need to see it from another perspective. So.
Nice.
Dang, dropping gems.
My parents, for sure. Like I'm a son of immigrants. I mean, I'm an immigrant as well. Like I moved here when I was 14. But the older I get, the more I understand how big of a sacrifice it was for them to do what they did and like move the whole family here. We moved here 20 years ago. So my dad is 61 now. He's gonna be 61 this year. So he was 40 when we moved here. Like I'm 35 now. I have one kid. I have another kid in the way. Like, can you imagine at our age just moving to a new country and starting over from scratch?
Absolutely not.
I know.
Right? And like, you know, the old man did it, and he did it because he wanted a better life for us. He wanted us to go to school in the United States, learn to speak English. Even if we decided to move back to Chile, he figured like, you know, we would have a better shot if we got our education here and we were bilingual. Then we decided to stay, and it became, hey, I want you guys to go to school here. And he worked his ass off to not saddle us with student loans, to like, you know, help us pay, like, you know, work our way through school. And there was a little bit of a struggle where like they wanted me to have a good life, and like for them that meant I graduated and had a degree, like like they wanted to be like an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, like, you know, that's the immigrant parent dream, right? So when I decided to drop out of school, not even drop out, I was like, early on, I was like, I'm taking a year off to see if I can do this geek company thing. But, you know, it's been 10 years since that happened. I never went back to school, and I think 15 degrees away from a bachelor's.
Wow.
So it's like my dad's over it. My mom won't let it go. My mom wants me to go back to school. Yeah. There's but at the end of the day, they're happy that, like, you know, my better life is not, like, you know, they like eventually they figure out like, hey, like, you know, he has a good life. He found a woman that he loves. They're gonna have these kids together. They love their grandchild. They, like, you know, I live out in Pennsylvania near them. I get to see them every week. I get to see my sister every week, and I get to see like my nephews and a niece every week. So they accomplished what they wanted to do. Like, you know, they gave us that better life. So, like, you know, having where we grew up in, it's so easy to just follow the path of everybody else of, like, you know, how many people we went to, like, were like so smart, so accomplished when we're like 14, 17, like they're like great athletes, whatever, but that's where it ended. They just got complacent and like they didn't keep pushing. Like now they live in the same town. And like you said, those little like central New Jersey towns, there's so many townies. There's so many people that never leave that little town. Maybe they will go to vacation in Florida, but like that's about it. And like you know what? They're happy doing that. But my parents did such years of sacrifice to get us here. When we just moved here and I was a freshman in high school, my dad had a job during the day, and then at night we deliver newspaper. We deliver the New York Times. Like that first year we were here, I would get up with him Saturday and Sunday to help him deliver newspaper. So like when I was 14, I would get up at 4 a.m. Saturday and Sunday to help my dad deliver 200 newspapers. He had 2 paper routes, and all that work, and every time we were at 4 a.m. he would drill it in my head. You have to go to school so you can do better, so you don't have to do this bullshit. And those were his words. Esta mierda. You have to do better than me so your children can do better than you. And that was just drilled in my head over and over. And it wasn't him just saying it, it was by example, And that is something that, you can't pay for. And I feel bad for kids that I don't feel bad, but I just appreciated my old man and my parents not only coming here and leading by example and putting all this hard work in so we have a better life, but also it's hey, this is the expectation we have. And I remember getting a bad grade, and my dad sitting me down. He's like, hey, how many jobs do I have? How much work am I doing? So you're not working right now. Your only job, do good at school, get into a university with a scholarship so we can pay for it, and get your degree. That's the only thing you need to worry about right now. So at the beginning when I started training jiu-jitsu, and then I got really into jiu-jitsu, that drove me crazy a little bit because that's not part of the plan. How are you gonna make money with this jiu-jitsu thing? That was their view of it. But then I fell in love with it. I started winning tournaments. I became somewhat prominent. Then it got me a job, and it was for when I started teaching jiu-jitsu for a college kid, a college kid. I was 22 when I started teaching jiu-jitsu, something like that. It was good money. I was making good money teaching jiu-jitsu. It wasn't that many hours in a day, and I could still go to school. So they were okay, they started warming up to the idea. And then the gi company came, and they were really nervous for me because they were I was putting a lot of money into getting those gis made. But eventually everything worked out, and they come to embrace my path, and they eventually they did there was some pushback, but they allowed me to pursue my path, and now here we are.
Wow, man, such a cool story. Such a cool story, man. I want to combine two points that we're going to talk about. So one is healthy habits for men, but not just men, but women, and also mental health, and talk about the role that jiu-jitsu has played in my life. So one thing that I struggle with, and maybe you guys can maybe shed light on this, is between working now, this new job, I work 12 months, work 8 to 4:30, but most days I'm going in at 6:30 and I'm leaving at 5:30 sometimes. So really working a lot of hours, and then not even working, but the kid, being married and having a kid, your time is zapped. So I feel I don't really have a lot of time for friends between work and family. It's not a lot of healthy things that I can do. So jiu-jitsu, right? I found that some of my closest adult friends have come from jiu-jitsu because we carve out that, whether it's twice or 3 times a week, we carve out that time to spend time together, because I think about the jiu-jitsu guys. I've seen jiu-jitsu people consistently the most over the past 10 years just because I'm all right, I'm going to train twice or 3 times a week. So in terms of mental health, I just feel I connect with the people that I train with, whether it's Nelson, who used to be my teacher, and he's dropping gems on me talking about hey, try this, when you're a father, try this. It's okay. You're going to be frustrated as a father. The babies are going to cry. Nelson was the first person to tell me that, your child is going to cry, because that's how they communicate. They can't say to you, hey, Dad, I'm hungry. Hey, Dad, I went to the bathroom. Hey, Dad, I want a bottle. They're just going to scream. And you're going to get frustrated because you're just tell me. But they can't do that yet. So, for me, jiu-jitsu has been a healthy habit, and it's also helped me in terms of mental health with dealing with things as an adult, because I said, I spend all my time with outside of work and family with jiu-jitsu people, you know what I mean? So those are the people where I'm hey, how do you deal with this? Or what's going on? We talked about Kev, and I talked about you. Do you guys kind of find that jiu-jitsu has been a healthy habit, or mental health, or just having friends and kind of talking about that stuff?
Yeah, of course. Of
Yeah.
course. I mean, that's like, yeah, usually our longest running friendships outside. Like, since we started jiu-jitsu, we usually find a way to support each other, make friendships,
Yeah.
keep each other around.
And it's funny because eventually all your all your friends become black belts. So you need to stop slacking there, Tristan. You're bringing my average down.
I'm bringing the average down.
No, but seriously, yeah, like jiu-jitsu, you need to make time to some kind of like movement habit, like movement practice, where you're going to yoga or lifting weights or whatever you're doing, kettlebells, whatever. And if that habit has like a communal aspect, even better, you know? So, and like you said, you form like such a tight bond with your jiu-jitsu mates, your jiu-jitsu classmates, because that communal suffering aspect of it. After you have like the hard practice in the summer and everybody's just freaking drenched, everybody's tired, you're just laying on the mat after doing king on the mat. There's that camaraderie there, and like that's like, dude, like we got through that together. Like, man, let's go grab a beer, let's do barbecue, whatever. It's hard to find anywhere else. And like you said, like those people, it's like the people that you went through those things to are the people that you can call at 2 a.m. and say, hey, my baby won't stop crying. It's like, hey, I can't figure this out. It's like, hey, my wife's mad at me, I don't know why. You know? And like those are the people you can have those conversations with. And I think that's super valuable. Also, I think this is a good ending spot here, because I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you. Yep, I gotta get back. I'm logging.
Where people can find you online for sweet bird pictures and
Oh yeah, so Tristian M. My Instagram is TRISTIANM. At Instagram, that's my tagline, and then Tristan Cox on Facebook. And I'm gonna end with one thing. Check out Jesse Itzler. I'm not sure if I pronounce his last name. He talks about the life resume. It's something that I live by and I love. And The Alchemist too. I said The Art of Learning, but also check out the book The Alchemist. And then you guys, yes. That book about the boy going on a journey to find his treasure. I can't give it away. But that is a must, that's like a life book that you have to read. Before we go, Nelson and Hillary, please give us one book that the audience should read, because you guys read a lot and you guys always drop knowledge.
I think a lot of people, one of the books I recommend the most lately is Grit by Angela Duckworth, I believe her name is. And it goes into hard things and how to build grit and the grit scale, and how like success doesn't necessarily come from being gifted or smarter than other people. It's just being able to stick it out.
Me, man, I'm falling off my reading game. But one that I still try to live by, and it helps keep me calm, is breath. I forget the author, but breath, and remembering to breathe, and breathing through your nose and not always through your mouth. And it helps me, I think, between working out, or like when I'm getting anxious, or just a lot of things. Maybe even just walking, or now that like I'm running out of space for my lungs and I'm pregnant. Thank you for listening, Panda Nation. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Inverted Gear podcast. You can find us at invertedgear.com, as well as your favorite podcast app. Don't forget to give us a like, and we'll see you soon.